I wasn't always, I'm vegan and ask me about it, I'll talk about it forever. But I wasn't always. I was boy, I will never make up for the number of animals I ate when I was a kid. But once I knew what I was doing, I made changes. And I think we can all do that. And I think we can all become more aware and sort of build our observation skills. Is what you're seeing just? Is what you're seeing the right thing? And at some point, if what you're seeing is not the right thing, you're going to make choices and you're going to take action.
Hi, and welcome to 5 Random Questions, the show where every question is an adventure. I'm your host, Danny Brown, and each week I'll be asking my guests 5 questions created by a random question generator. The guest has no idea what the questions are, and neither do I, which means this could go either way. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this week's episode. Today's guest is Izolda Trakhtenberg, a former master trainer for NASA, whose approach to training and education has made her a sought-after speaker and coach for creatives and companies. She's also written 5 non-fiction books as well as 3 fiction novels, including the first book in the Cassie Belmont Tarot Reader mystery series. On top of that, she's recently completed her first play, Listen, and she's writing 2 musicals. And I feel I need to take a break here just for that bio. But just to round things up, she's also the host of the Creative Solutions podcast, where she interviews peak performers on creativity and innovation. So, after all that, Izolda, welcome to 5 Random Questions.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
I'd be remiss if I don't ask you about some of that, because that's a really impressive mixture. First of all, NASA trainer. Obviously, NASA, you mentioned that name, it sounds cool right away. How did that come about?
It came about strictly by accident. I got out of college and ended up working for the National Geographic Society as somebody who was doing tech support. And I was sitting around with my housemates and lamenting the fact that I needed to work at NASA. And a friend of mine who was there said, NASA? What do you do in National Geographic Society? And I said, I do tech support. And he went, NASA needs a tech support person. Want to come work at NASA? So I went, sure. And I ended up going to NASA and doing tech support for a while. I'm a complete astronomy nerd and worked with a phenomenal scientist fixing her computer. And I said, Elisa, if there's ever anything you have that I could work with you on, let me know. And she said, well, actually, I just got this funding to do this training worldwide. How would you like to do that? So it's my lesson in always ask. Just always ask for what you want. And when you do, magical things happen. I ended up traveling the world for NASA, teaching people all about how to save the earth through science. And I ended up teaching scientists how to tell their stories in such a way that even kindergartners would love them. And that kind of communication and science storytelling is one of my great loves.
And I can imagine that'd be like, you mentioned kindergartners. I can imagine that'd be a rapt audience. We have a very well-known astronaut in Canada, where I'm from. Well, I'm not from. I'm from the UK, obviously, but I live in Canada. And one of our famous astronauts, Chris Hadfield, when he came back from doing his space mission, he went around schools talking about what he did in the Canadian, equivalent of NASA, etc. And the kids just loved it. He came to our kids' school and they were just like sat at assembly going, wow, taking everything in. It's great to see, as you mentioned, a new generation of people getting introduced to science and everything about that. So that's pretty cool. And you don't do that anymore now. You're stopped that.
I actually work with schools sometimes when they want me to come and do assemblies. And I work in soil science. So my big job is to go from ew, dirt to ooh, soil. And that's a lot of what I do when I work with schools. But a lot of the work that I did, again, was storytelling and creative based. And so now I work with companies and individuals who want to become more innovative in their lives and in their work. And NASA comes into play because I sometimes still do little contracts for them. But most of the time, I'm working with other people to become innovative in ways that NASA's innovative, because I worked there for 20 years and got immersed and infused and suffused with all the cool innovative things that NASA does. And now I want to bring that kind of world-aware innovation to everybody.
And obviously with NASA, I mean, I would imagine it would be a high pressure environment at times as well because of what they do and, who they're doing it with. And I know this wasn't in part of the introduction I did there, but I know you've spoken about your own childhood in a pressure environment there. You mentioned, about being an immigrant while we were in the green room. you were 7 years old and you were helping people, you were in a war zone, helping people get to bomb shelters and stay safe. And that must have been, I don't even imagine how that must have been for you.
I think so many of us don't know what we're made of until we're tested. And I didn't realize that I couldn't or I shouldn't do the things that I was doing, but it became my job. In my family, I was an easy sleeper, and when the air raid sirens would go off, I was the one who'd get up and make sure everybody got up and got down into the shelter, and then knocking on doors as we were going, because we all had to sort of file down the stairs into the sub basement to get into the shelters. And then my mom is a singer and I'm a singer, and what we'd do is we'd sing folk songs to sort of help everyone stay okay while we were in the shelters. And then generally within a few hours, we were allowed back up to our apartments and things. But in that moment, it's very tense. And again, creativity, doing something creative together is what helped everybody stay much more calm than they otherwise would have.
And I can imagine that must have helped you in your later life. What some of the stuff you've been doing and what you do now, obviously with clients, it's taking that resilience and showing them, how to overcome challenges, etc.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that we learn about ourselves is when we're tested, how can we think laterally? How can we think what they call outside the box? How can we act in a way that is responding rather than reacting? Because reacting is immediate and responding is taking a little bit of time to get inspired to figure out what the answer might be that will be an even better solution than what the immediate answer might have been.
And speaking of responding and speaking of answers, I feel that's a nice little segue. I like the way you led up to that there. Kudos to that. So I feel it's a nice little segue into the 5 random questions that we're going to talk about today. So just a reminder to the listeners, these are completely random. I've never seen the questions before. Izolda hasn't seen the questions before. We'll see where they go. So let's bring up the random question generator. Ooh, I like this one. This ties in nicely to what we've just been speaking about. So Izolda, question 1. Who are you becoming?
Wow, what an excellent question. If I had absolutely anything I could become, I would become more myself. I am becoming someone who's directing shows on Broadway. That's my goal, my manifestation. And I'm becoming someone who wants to be more peaceful. If you're asking about people, I would say I'm becoming everyone from Albert Einstein to Steve Jobs to Meryl Streep to Shayna Taub, who's younger than I am, which is really fun, to to any number of people who use their voices to help those who cannot help themselves.
And I feel that ties in. I mentioned, obviously, you've written nonfiction books and also fiction books. And you've got the first part of the Tarot Reader series. But you're also written a play. So does this, who you're becoming, you mentioned, you're a singer, you helped people with your voice when you were a child in the bomb shelters. Is this a sort of natural progression from all the stuff that you've done helping creatives to being your own creative person now as you move into the next stage of your career and life journey?
Sure, absolutely. I think every experience adds to who we are and makes a beautiful dessert out of it, hopefully. Yet also, one of the things that is really important to me is I think we're all creative. We just lose it, most of us, as we're growing up. So I'm getting back to some roots. Somebody asked me the other day, when was the very happiest you've ever been? And I thought about it and I went, the very happiest I've ever been, I was in college and I directed a full-length play for a women's studies class. We had to do some kind of an activist thing. And I directed a full-length play on a $50 budget with 4 actors, and it was amazing to see that with $50 I directed a 2-hour play, and I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, I lost 15 pounds. I lived that play for the 2 months that we prepared. We showed it once, we ran it once, and it was the best time of my life. And I went and did other things because there are these other facets to me. I want to help people. I want to help the earth. I want to help the animals. But that creative facet, the one that goes, I love looking at a play or a musical and figuring out an amazing way to tell those stories, that lay dormant for a long time. And now finally, all these years later, it's becoming much more a reality. And I recently made my first few dollars doing musical theater in New York City, and I'm going to hold on to that check and I'm going to put it up on a wall because, wow, it's what I've wanted to do for decades. Other things came and went, and now finally I'm getting to a place where I can laser focus on this, and that's the dream and the goal.
Very cool. And I'm sure for that student that was doing the directorial debut at the play, that check, even though you mentioned it's a few dollars now, that would have been like a nice little amount, I feel, maybe back in the college days.
Oh, yeah.
That is awesome. And just to finish off this question, actually, just to tie it around, obviously it's about who you're becoming. If there was just one person maybe that you could become for a day, who do you think that would be and why?
I would say Albert Einstein, to finally maybe prove the theory that he didn't get to prove before he passed.
I like that. That is a good one. We'll see if we can. Well, I can't make it happen. I don't have that power. But you never know with science the way it's gone. Maybe. Maybe. Awesome. That's a great start. Alrighty, let's move on to number 2. Question number 2. Interesting. I feel I might know the answer to this, but let's go. If you had to work but didn't need the money, what would you choose to do?
I direct plays on Broadway. If I had to, yeah, I would do that. See, that's the problem. I feel like I'm split in many different directions. If I had to work and didn't need the money, I would also be doing something that I do now. I helped do animal rescue. So I'm a transporter. I take injured animals from one place to another to get to rehab or something like that. So I'd probably do more of that too. So I would be split between the creative part and the helping animals part.
And I wonder, would you create maybe like a foundation? Is it a foundation? Not a foundation. Maybe my words have left me. Would you be creating something where you would have people globally that would, carry that on for you as well? So you would be the head. Not trainer, that's the wrong word. My words have completely deserted me. So
that's totally fine. Some sort of a nonprofit like that would be great. And I think that's a slightly different question. So if money were no object and I could do anything, I've often said that if I won a huge lottery, I would take many of the millions and buy up a bunch of land and make that all into animal wildlife refuge. So that we could bring animals that were injured or animals that that are otherwise in danger and bring them in somewhere that's very safe. So absolutely having some sort of a worldwide nonprofit that is designed, like my friend Wendy Hapgood runs something called Wild Tomorrow, where they are literally buying up land in South Africa and making that a wildlife habitat. And so I would funnel money to them. I would funnel money to my friend Lisa Robinson, who runs a farm animal sanctuary in New York State. Lots and lots of different ways to serve. And maybe I wouldn't necessarily be the person handling the money, because don't ever let me handle the money. I'm rubbish at handling the money. Like literally, if you give me $55 to count, I will count 54 once and 57 the next time. And the ladies at the bank, when they would see me coming, would be like, oh no, it's her. I was always wrong with the money I counted. So don't let me handle the money, but being the person who gets to talk about why it's important. Yeah, I'm right there to talk about why we need to be helping animals, why we need to be preserving and conserving the environment. I'm your gal.
And I think that's obviously it's such a noble cause, and we see more people doing this now as well, and taking the initiative to actually do something, as opposed to saying, wouldn't it be great if we could do this, and people actually doing it. There's a chap he's got his own website now, obviously, but I follow him on Twitter, or X if you want to call it that. He's called Neil Harbison, and he's over in Asia. He's got a program whose goal is to rescue 10,000 dogs from abusive, environments. Mm-hmm. And he documents what he's doing and what his team's doing. And you see the dogs at the start of the journey, and it's horrible to see. And then you see them, they're in their happy place. They're laughing. They've got the big smile. They're wagging their tails. They're running about. And it's amazing to see. And I feel there needs to be more, A, of that happening, and B, just making, sharing awareness of people doing stuff like that.
Absolutely. And the more we do that, the more we allow the opportunity to happen for other people to become aware and do it too. I wasn't always, I'm vegan and ask me about it, I'll talk about it forever. But I wasn't always. I was I will never make up for the number of animals I ate when I was a kid. But once I knew what I was doing, I made changes. And I think we can all do that. And I think we can all become more aware and sort of build our observation skills. Is what you're seeing just? Is what you're seeing the right thing? And at some point, if what you're seeing is not the right thing, you're going to make choices and you're going to take action. And so, like the man that you follow on Twitter or X, there are people out there every single day. My friend Jimmy, shout out to Jimmy, who's constantly, he's the one who's aware of where there's an injured bird that needs to be taken to a wildlife rehabber, or somebody's found a kitten. My husband and I, this lady put out a note. Hey, I've rescued these 3 kittens. Eyes are barely open. I need kitten formula. So if you knew where Brooklyn and the Bronx is, you would go, oh, yeah, that's a long way. But I drove to a pet store, bought kitten formula, took it to the woman. And then 3 days later, she said, I need you to come get these kittens. I can't take care of them. So I went and picked them up. My husband and I went and picked them up from the Bronx and drove them way out to Long Island, which is about an hour and a half. But in the meantime, between that, my husband got to play mom because I had to go work. So he was mama cat to these 3 practically newborn kittens in our bathroom because we have cats. And he took care of them all day and was feeding them with a little plastic syringe. And now these kittens are thriving, and we're going to adopt one of them when they're of adoptable age. But the point is, once you know what's going on, once you know that these things are happening, you're going to want to do something about it, because we are a compassionate species on the whole.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you see it with the younger generation now. I mean, I'm of an age where I'm way past, not way past helping, but we didn't help when I was my kid's age, when, for example. And you see it now, kids are so much more involved and so much more aware of the world and environment and living beings around them. And it's amazing to see compared to, when I was a kid and using sprays for my hair and all that horrible stuff that you would do, because you didn't know any better. So I agree. And I was going to ask you about the kittens. Did you adopt them? But it sounds like you're going to have one anyway.
We have not adopted one yet, but we're going to. I've talked my husband into it. We adopted one of our current cats from this same rehabber, so we knew exactly where to take these new kittens. And so Heather, shout out to RTR Rescue. She's grooming them. She's getting them ready to the point where she is willing to adopt, but she's very specific and very particular about who she adopts out to. She's already told me I can have one. Yay. But if I could have all 3 in our little New York apartment, I would, but that would mean we'd have 5 cats. And my husband has said no. Too many cats for him.
That is awesome. And like I say, it's great to see, this happening and more often and more, awareness being brought to it.
For sure.
Speaking of awareness, I'm aware it must be question 3. So let's have a little look what comes up here. Oh, I feel like these questions are really well suited to you, Izolda. Okay.
I love
Here's
it.
question 3. Would you rather be able to breathe underwater or have the agility of a cat?
Ooh, okay. So I have my scuba certification. And what's interesting about that is the very first time I entered a pool after I'd gotten my scuba sea card, I tried to breathe and it did not work because I did not have a regulator in my mouth. I would much rather have the agility of a cat for sure. I saw a meme the other day that said, living with a cat is like living with a work of art that periodically throws up on the carpet. And I just thought that was great because it's true. They are works of art. They are incredibly self-sufficient, but also incredibly loving and are able to do pretty much anything they set their minds to. My younger cat plays fetch, and we don't play fetch with him. He plays fetch with us. In other words, he will bring us, he loves zip ties. They're his favorite. He will bring you a zip tie. You can throw it anywhere and he will find it and bring it back. And you can throw it somewhere where essentially he can't get to it. He doesn't give up. 45 minutes later, he has figured out a way to get back to where he needs to get back to behind the dresser that you cannot get back. I don't know how he does it, but he does it. And he comes back 45. He has object permanence, which I've never seen before in a cat. He brings it back to you and he hands it to you and he goes, again. And agility of a cat without a doubt.
Yeah, I remember we used to have cats before our kids were born. We lived in an apartment in Toronto, my wife and I, and we had cats there. And one of them used to love playing soccer with us. So my wife would be at one end of the hallway, I'd be at the other end, and we were like a little soft, bouncy, squishy ball or whatever. and we'd kick it upwards at about head height. So say about 5.5 feet. And our cat, from a sitting position, would jump up, grab the ball in the front paws, and then land with the ball, and then want to play again. It was crazy. So it ties in perfectly there. And you you don't sort of necessarily associate cats with wanting to do stuff like that, but obviously they're far more intelligent, far more different from a dog, for example, that most people would associate with a game like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, is it because I always think of cats, and you see the ancient movies with like Cleopatra and the Romans, Egyptians, etc., and you've got the cats that were worshipped there, and yet the dogs are supposedly man's best friend. I'm wondering, what's your take on how that came about, how that sort of changed, from cats being around and doing the thing that they do to dogs being the right-hand animal, if you like, to humans.
I think that a lot of it is marketing, truthfully, and wow, you've opened up such a can. So they say that dogs were domesticated somewhere around 70,000 years ago, and what were they good for, quote unquote? They were guarding, as agriculture came to be, they'd help guard the crop or the livestock, whatever. They were there to because they have this incredible sense of smell. They could sense danger, blah, blah, blah. So they were helper creatures. Cats weren't specifically helper creatures. They were more, as I said, self-sufficient, independent, and works of art. So you see the one that's going to help you and the one that you kind of revere. And so to me, as we become more of a society of people who need help because we've lost our own senses, we probably had better senses of smell 20,000 years ago, but we don't have that so much anymore. We've adapted to a different way of living. We need creatures in our lives who do have that really good sense of smell. Cats aren't trainable for help this blind person. A cat will go, oh, I want to go over there, and the cat will go over there. and the dog is the one that's going to work to help you. So I think that the temperament of the creatures has sort of dictated how we interact with them. Fundamentally, also, domesticated dogs probably need us, and domesticated cats, I actually took a picture of one of my cats. I have 2 black cats, and I took a picture of Ninja, who is the softest, squishiest. He loves my husband so much that Rich can't sit down for longer than 3 seconds, literally, before Ninja's lying on him. But I took a picture of him, and he just looked wild. He looked incredibly feral, and he's the smushiest, cushiest. And yet you look at him and you go, that is a wild creature, one step off. Whereas my dog, who was a husky, you could tell he was right there. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And so the temperaments have been bred much more for dogs to be helpers and much more for cats not to be helpers, for cats to be themselves.
So you feel like if there was a massive apocalypse and for whatever reason, most of humanity is gone, do you feel it would be the cats that would be the survivors over the dogs when it comes to making it work, if that's the right question?
Domesticated cats versus domesticated dogs?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I do. I think dogs would have to go a little bit back further or go back or go forward further to get back to complete hunting instincts, whereas cats have them now, But one of the things that's interesting about that, dogs can survive on a vegetarian diet and cats are carnivores. They can't. So if the food sources were such that cats couldn't hunt because there were no other animals, for example, that would be a problem. Otherwise, I think cats have retained, they've been domesticated something like 3,000 years. So cats have retained a lot more of their predatory instincts, I would say, than dogs have. And I could be wrong. I'm not particular professional in this, but I've done some studying because I had many years ago, my husband and I got a dog who was supposed to be a husky, but turned out our vet said, no, she's not a husky. She's an Alaskan Malamute with a healthy dose of timber wolf in her. And when you looked at Athena, you kind of went, oh yeah, she could kill me. She could. And she fought me for alpha status. And it was interesting. I went away once for 3 days And the first night, she slept on the floor at the foot of the bed. And the second night, she slept on the foot of the bed. The third night, she slept next to my husband on my side of the bed. And when I came home the next day, she growled at me. So I literally had to put her on her back and put my teeth to her throat in order for her to remember I was the alpha. And once she remembered that, she was like, oh, yeah, that's right. You're the alpha. Gotcha. And then we were fine. But she was not happy to see me because Rich was her alpha male and I was the interloper when I came back. So we had to reestablish that hierarchy. And what's interesting, again, many moons ago, Athena was alpha of all the dogs in our little town where we were living at the time. And I started this drum circle in the woods. We had these protected woods outside our house. And I started a drum circle in the woods. We're all drumming there, maybe 25 people drumming, maybe 10, 15 dogs. And Athena's sitting, and all the dogs walked over to her and kind of touched her shoulder with their heads, and then sort of walked away. And the next dog came and sort of paid obeisance, if you will. And then she did something I didn't like, and I went, Athena! And she went, huh! And she walked over to me, and she put her head against me. And then one by one, every single dog came over and put their head against me because they realized, oh, we thought she was the alpha, but it turns out you're the alpha. So all 15 dogs came over and kind of touched their cheek to my leg to make sure that I knew that they knew that I was the alpha. It was a fascinating thing to watch.
That's amazing. Yeah, I couldn't see a cat doing that.
Not ever.
Know, the cat would be waiting for you to put your head on. That is amazing. Hey there, Danny here. I hope you're enjoying this episode of 5 Random Questions. If you're loving the fun as much as I am, I've got something extra special for you. The Question Master membership. As a premium member, you'll get ad-free early access to every episode. But that's not all. You'll also be able to submit your own random question to be asked in an upcoming episode and spark the next great conversation. Plus, there are even more exclusive perks waiting for you as a Question Master. So, if you want to take your 5 Random Questions experience to the next level, head over to 5randomquestions.com/support to sign up and become a Question Master. Thanks for supporting the show, and now back to the questions. And speaking of leading, I'm going to lead us into question number 4. Let's have a look. That was an amazing tale though. Oh. Okay, here we go. Question 4. Would you rather have a permanently clogged nose or a piece of green food always stuck in your teeth?
Piece of green food always stuck in my teeth, without a doubt.
Not going for the clog? You don't care about the smile and everything? Or?
Oh, right now I have a clogged nose and I'm miserable. I'm a singer and I'm a professional speaker and I'm a podcaster. I train people on how to communicate. If I had a permanently clogged nose, I wouldn't be able to do my life's work. So I have no problem with spinach in my teeth for the rest of my life as long as I can keep speaking and singing.
That makes sense. And so with a clogged nose, obviously you mentioned you got one at the moment. What's your sort of remedy for clearing that? Is it just sort of lots of like steamed water, stuff like that? Or
I was born in the former Soviet Union, and what my mother used to do is she used to boil potatoes, and you would sort of stick your face in the steam of the potatoes boiling. Weirdly, that would help. I also use the neti pot and I gargle like nobody's business every half hour. And that's what I tell my singing students too, is if you have a sore throat and you have to perform tomorrow, gargle every half hour religiously. And it's amazing. And then hot water with ginger and lemon helps. There are lots of things that you can do. The big thing is don't overuse your voice.
And I was going to say, obviously you mentioned you're a singer, you're a podcaster, so you speak a lot as well. Has there ever been a time where it's just been so bad you can't perform, or you think, you know what, I can't do this show, or you just crack on through it?
Oh, I've canceled shows for sure, because there are times when my voice goes to this and there's nothing I can do. On the other hand, interestingly, I was auditioning for the Michigan State Honors Choir. I grew up in Michigan, and I had lost my voice. But weirdly, I lost my speaking voice, but not my singing voice, and I was auditioning as a soprano, singing high up. And I was able to sing, but I couldn't speak. So I walk into audition, and we had to sing these 2 songs. One was in Latin, one was a spiritual. I sang, and after I was done singing, one of the judges asked me a question and I said, I'm sorry, I can't speak. And they went, wait, what? You just sang. I know, I just sang, but I can't speak. And they said, wait a minute, you sing right now, but you can't say a word. No, I cannot. And they went, okay. And I got in. And I think they thought, wow, if she sang like that when she can't speak, she must be pretty good. And so yeah, I've also, in the middle of singing, performing, I had turned out pneumonia when I was doing Kurt Weill's Down in the Valley and couldn't breathe in without coughing. So we had, there's the end of Act One, there's my character, Jenny Parsons, is supposed to let out a huge scream. Well, to let out a huge scream, you have to take in a deep breath. I couldn't take in a deep breath. And then there was this young ninth grader named Mario Gardner, shout out to Mario, who could scream like the Dickens. And so what we did is he stood right next to me. And when I was ready to scream, I would touch his arm and I would mime screaming, but he would scream, because if I tried to breathe in enough to scream, I would just cough up a lung. So everybody was like, wow, Izolda, you have a great scream. And I'm like, nope, Mario has a great scream. So you have to do what you have to do. And sometimes you just make modifications in order to have the show go on.
And that's almost like, it's not quite like it, but it's almost like having your early version AI replacement for voiceover. You've got Mario's at the side ready to come on there.
Absolutely.
We'll definitely keep the green food away from the teeth, and we'll go with no, that's not right. We'll keep the clogged nose away, and we'll keep the green food and the teeth. Let's get it right, Danny. Speaking of clogged and not being clogged up, we're going to move on to number 5 because we're not clogging up the 4 questions that came before. So we're doing well here. We're coming up to the final hurdle here. Okay, Izolda, here we go. Question 5. We're almost at the end here. What part of the human face is your favorite?
The human face, the eyes, for sure.
Now, is that because you like the typical, we always speak of them being the windows to your soul, or is it something just they're there and you can't ignore them because you'd look weird if you didn't have eyes? Or
yeah, I mean, yes, windows to the soul. First of all, I have always had a thing for what someone's actual iris looks like. You can get really in, and they're never just brown or just blue. There's a cornucopia of colors and patterns and things in every single iris. No two are alike. They're so beautiful. And also around the eye, you know, how the eye is formed, how it's shaped, the type of lashes, the type of brows, but also minute expressions. You can see the smallest expressions on someone's face change. Even if the rest of their face stays identical to what it was before, the tiniest, you can tell when someone becomes brilliantly happy or very angry just by what their eyes do. And I actually was talking about the movie The Devil Wears Prada the other day, in that Meryl Streep in her last 10 seconds of that movie gives a masterclass in acting with just her eyes. You can watch her think of all the different choices she made in her life, how proud she is of Andy, Anne Hathaway's character, how happy she is that Andy made the choices she did, and the realization that she is in a car about to be driven to a very important meeting and her driver isn't driving. And she flows from this happy, nostalgic, wistful moment to go with just her eyes. And it is just watching Meryl Streep do what she does is brilliant. Plus, the eyes do something so incredible, being able to take in, even though I know our sense of smell is the closest to memory, being able to take in the vast amounts of data our eyes take in and help our brain interpret is mind-boggling to me. Plus, the rods and the cones, come on. Cones see color and rods see black and white. And why you don't see well in Twilight is because the eye doesn't know whether or not the rods or the cones should be the ones it uses, is brilliant and mind-boggling and so complex. I love it.
It's like they always say, like something that seems so simple, not simple because it's an eye, but on the surface, it's a ball and it's got an iris and a globe. Like that. I mean, it's fairly simple when you look at it, you see that's an eye. But it's like you see all the stuff that's going on behind it to make this work and to recognize and to separate and diffuse, colors and spheres and everything. It's just crazy. And your point about Meryl Streep, who I think is a phenomenal actress, probably one of the best ever. If you look back at, I think that's why I sort of really enjoy the old movies from the 30s and 40s, because a lot of that was down to the actors and the actresses and their eyes and what they portray, with the music behind them, because there wasn't a lot of effects and you couldn't do a lot of, special AI generation, etc. And it was all on their face and their eyes, and it just told you so much more of a story about them and what they were acting about at the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I mean, you watch Rosalind Russell and His Girl Friday. She does such an amazing job. I mean, that movie moves so fast, so many words. I think a typical movie will have 120 screenplay pages. That had 192. There were so many words packed in. But at the same time, in the very few quiet moments, you see her and Cary Grant exchange these looks and you go, yeah, that's what it's all about. And Cary Grant was phenomenal at that too, watching him in To Catch a Thief when you're not sure who he is. And in Notorious, watching him be so in love, but be unable to declare himself to the woman he loves because he's got this job to protect everything. And how his agony. And the Philadelphia Story, the same thing. He did the exact same thing there as Dext. He was in agony, and the only way you saw it was by looking at his eyes, because the rest of the time, his character was very devil-may-care, but he wasn't. And it was brilliant bits of acting from, these incredible superstars.
And as you mentioned, it all comes from the eyes, and I guess that's why they always say, you mentioned about you can keep your face like a really good poker face, but your eyes may just give you away because you've got that little tinkle there that someone can pick up on.
Absolutely.
So that's awesome, Izolda. I really, I've enjoyed hearing your answers to these 5 very random questions. To be fair, because I put you on the spot over the last half hour or so, to be fair, it's only fair that I offer you the chance to ask me a random question of your own. So fire away if you wish.
What is your favorite memory from 4th grade? And why?
4th grade. So I was in the UK then. So that would be 4th grade is 9 years old, I think, in North America. Yep. So 9. Okay. So 9, I'd be still in primary school. I think 9 years old. Yeah. Okay. So that ties in actually. So when I was 9, it was a pretty bad summer because both my granddads died within about a month of each other. And my school friend, Corinne, she died from an asthma attack. In the summer, during the summer holidays. I know this sounds really weird because it's not a favourite memory of a grade 9, but I'm getting there, I promise. So I always remember that summer because obviously it was a very destructive summer from a personal point of view. And I knew my granddads, they were old and both of them were suffering from cancer. So we kind of knew they were coming to the end of their lives. But Corinne, same age as me, just out the blue, she had an asthma attack. Nobody could get to her in time because it was very different then. You're talking like the 78, 77 time. Very different, emergency services and medications, etc. And unfortunately, she went. Now, about that time, Star Wars, the original Star Wars movie, had come out in the US, and it was like huge amount of, huge amount of excitement and expectation about this movie. It was like breaking records all over the place in the US, but we had to wait because we were in the UK. We always got stuff 6 months to a year later from the US. So that came out in, I think it was the summer of 78. It was like winter 77, summer of 78, maybe in the UK. So my uncle, because my stepdad was also going through his own cancer battle at the time, just to add to the joy. So my uncle took me to see Star Wars, and we waited in line for about 2 hours, but we got in there, and it's always been my favourite movie scene. It will remain so. At 9 years old, you're sat in a darkened theatre, you're a little kid, and this huge spaceship comes over with the noise and the rumbling and everything that seemed to go on forever. And then the next 2 hours made me completely forget about what was happening in my life, but also introduced me to the spectacle of what a massive summer movie was going to look like. So that's probably my favourite memory, even though it's tied in, because it sort of countered all the bad stuff that was going on with this positive, good memory.
Wow. That is incredible. First of all, that's a lot of losses for your very young life then. And wow. And it's amazing to listen to you talk about it because on the one hand, you're very matter of fact, but on the other hand, obviously you love these people so very much. So Thank you for sharing that. Unbelievable. And I noticed the Boba Fett actually behind you, the baby Boba Fett. I am a ginormous Star Wars nerd, completely ginormous. And yes, I did celebrate, May the 4th be with you, of course, but Towel Day and Star Wars Day, May 25th, 1977, that whole summer of 1977, I saw Star Wars. I've seen Star Wars 72 times and counting, because I used to take my little sister and we would go to the first show, and then we would hide when they emptied the theater, and then we would stay for like 3 showings a day, every single day. I just, as often as possible, watched that movie. And then the people I babysat for had 2 movies on Betamax. They had Jaws and they had Star Wars. And so what did I do every Saturday night? I watched Star Wars. So I share that with you. In a different way, I had a very challenging childhood. And so that notion of being able to see something like, I know they call it A New Hope, like Star Wars, and see what was possible, it changed so many lives. I mean, say what you will about Lucas and the first 3 movies and blah, 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 blah. He changed billions of lives with that story. And I know it's the hero's journey, and I know he studied Kurosawa, and I don't care. It's still brilliant.
No, for sure. And I'm sure Kurosawa was inspired by someone before him. So it's just a journey. Like you mentioned, the hero's journey book. It's part of that, right? Everybody has someone to inspire and take it to the next generation, if you like.
It's okay to stand on the shoulders of giants as long as you thank the giants. I think that's the way to, if you honor the giants whose shoulders you stand. I mean, Lucas talks about how much he appreciates the work of Joseph Campbell, because Campbell really, he wrote The Hero Within. He wrote Myths and Magic. He wrote all of that. And he got his research and his inspiration from people who came before him. So I am okay with standing on the shoulders of giants, again, as long as you honor and thank them.
And speaking of thanking, I'm going to thank you now for appearing on today's episode, because it has been a real joy to chat with you, Izolda, and learn more about your own experiences and the things that we talked about with the 5 random questions. For anyone that wants to connect with you directly, whether that's through your coaching, through your education, through your podcast, come see your play, anything like that at all, where is the best place to connect and catch up with you?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that. I appreciate it. So if you want to find out more about me, the best place is izoldaspeaks.com, IZOLDA speaks.com. If you want to know more about the speaking, which is interesting, or the singing, that's Voice Mastery Studio or voicemastery.studio. It's all confusing. A lot of what I do, you can find me on the Creative Solutions podcast on Instagram and at Izolda T, pretty much every social media channel. If you look for at Izolda T, except for Facebook, because at Izolda T on Facebook is a porn star. So don't go there. But everywhere else, I was there too late. Most things at Izolda T, I've been able to grab. That one I did not get to. And if you go there, use at your own risk. It turns out a lot of Izoldas are Eastern European porn stars. And let me tell you, I have gotten some really bizarre spam. So, ew.
I can imagine. And to make sure you get to the right Izolda T, I'll be sure to leave all these links in the show notes. So whichever app you're listening on, be sure to check them out, and that will take you to the right person with the right experience. So again, Izolda, thanks for appearing on this week's 5 Random Questions.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks for listening to 5 Random Questions. If you enjoyed this week's episode, be sure to follow for 3 on the app you're currently listening on, or online at 5randomquestions.com. And if you feel like leaving a review, well, that would make me happier than that time I played the fairy godmother in my primary school end-of-year play and got to sing alongside my crush at the time who plays Cinderella. But seriously, leaving a review or recommending it to your friends would make my day. Until the next time, keep asking those questions.